Hello and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel. If you're returning, thank you as always for being here. I appreciate you more than I can say. I have some brand new Patriotic DIYs for you today, so let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting.
DIY number one. All right, I have these shelf sitter signs from the Dollar Tree, and we are going to be crafting with them, obviously. so, the first thing I wanted to do was peel off the paper sign that's applied to this. Y'all, this was a job and a half trying to get this off. It did not want to peel off of here. As you can see, I started kind of drenching it with water, letting that soak in, using my little spatula to scrape it off. This took a lot of time. If I had to do it again, I would either opt to paint right over it, which probably isn't the best idea, or if you have like a belt sander, like some sort of an electric sander, I would probably just go at it with that. If you have to do it the way I did it, it's possible. It just took a long time. So the next thing I'm going to do is measure off. I started to measure off, I believe this was 8 inches or 10 inches. It might have been 10 inches. I'm trying to remember. I think it was actually, yeah, I think it was 10. And I was planning on doing, no, I think it was 8. Sorry. I ended up with using 10 and 8 and a 6-inch piece. My original thought, I think, was to do 8, 7, 6. But then when I lined them up next to each other, I decided I didn't like the way that they looked if they were that short. I wanted them to, not that short. If they had only just an inch difference, I wanted the difference between the levels to be a little bit different. So I ended up with a 10-inch, an 8-inch, and a 6-inch, as you can see them here. And the pieces were, I believe, 18 inches. So I used one full piece and then just 6 inches of the second piece. So I'll keep the other part of that in my stash for a later project. But for now, I have my crimson chalk paint, my Adirondack white, and then my ocean. And I am going to paint these as I have everything lined up here. And then you can see up at the top, I've got little wooden stars that I had pulled out of my stash. Those are also from the Dollar Tree. I'd gotten them in a bundle of a bunch of different little wooden cutouts. So they're coming in handy. And then I also have these little wooden letters that I received from, I believe my sweet subscriber Rose had sent these to me a while back, and I've had them in my stash. I'm using the USA, which I painted in the ocean blue, and I am also painting this tallest piece in ocean as well. And then that the red was the middle-sized piece, and then the smallest, the shortest, is going to be the white that I'll be doing in a moment. But for right now, and I apologize that I'm off screen. I didn't realize I was when I was doing this. I'm using some popsicle sticks, and I am trimming these down. So the wooden pieces are 2 inches wide. So I'm cutting popsicle sticks that are 2 inches long. And I was able to get two 2-inch segments out of each popsicle stick. And I used 3 total popsicle sticks. So I'll have 6 segments of popsicle stick. So now I'm also painting, I painted the popsicle sticks white clearly, and then I painted the stars white as well. So you can see here, I am just starting to line these up now that everything is dry, and I'm going to apply my little stripes to the red, and my USA is going to go on the white, and then my little white stars are going to end up on the blue. So those are still drying a little bit, so I didn't want to put them onto the blue just yet. So applying this just with hot glue. You can certainly use a different kind of glue if you want something that's going to be a longer term hold. I find for things like this, the hot glue works just fine. So going to be applying my letters next, and then I will put down the stars. And now I'm going to be ready to put all of the pieces together. So I'm going to stand them up on my surface so I make sure that they all are lined up and flat so that they don't wobble when they're, set out for decor. Now the red I found was kind of wobbling a little bit, and I think it was because I had the end that I'd cut down on the table, so I just flipped it over. And now I'm putting a generous amount of hot glue along the edges of the white and flipping that back up so that it's all sealed together. Now I'm going to make little, oh my goodness, what do you call those on firecrackers? The things that fuses. Those. So I'm making fuses. I'm just going to tie a knot a couple of inches down on my jute cord here, jute twine. I'm lining them up to make sure that they're relatively the same length. Probably doesn't matter if they're different lengths. It will give it more character if they are different, but got those all lined up, tied the knots. I cut the jute right at the base of each of those knots, and then I'm just applying a tiny little bit of hot glue. Sorry again that I'm off camera. I need to be a little bit more aware of where I am versus what the camera is capturing. But applying just a tiny bit of hot glue to the base of that so that it doesn't ooze out all over the top of my project, and just tucking that down and having it stand straight up, and this is done. Let me know what you think. DIY number 2. All right, this is a piece of wood from the Home Depot or Lowe's or something. I can't remember. It's been in my stash for a while, but I was showing you that it's about 3/4 of an inch thick and 2.5 inches wide, and I believe it was 24 inches long. So I'm in my Cricut design space. I just put together something saying God bless America. And I am, I played around with a bunch of different fonts until I found one that I liked for this. So this is a free font that I'm using in Cricut. I am hard pressed to remember what the name of it was, but I will have to look that up if that's of interest to you. Running it through my Cricut Joy, getting this all cut out. Very simple design. I am going to be using this as a stencil. So once I had it cut, I'm going to have the machine go ahead and unload it. I'll pull it off of my little mat. I was using smart vinyl, but I was using a scrap of smart vinyl, so I did need to use the mat for it. And I'm going to cut the stencil down so that the words are each separate. I also didn't want to have a ton of space around the words on the edges, on the right and left side of each word, because I wanted to be able to get everything centered as I work. And I figured the easiest way to do that would be to have an equal amount of space on either side. So you're going to see me trimming this down even a little bit more on the sides, or at least on one side, depending on where my word is showing up on the vinyl. But just going to get this all weeded. This went really quickly. Nice big chunky letters are good for that. I did have that little bit of the A, the center of that A, that I needed to make sure stayed down. So I'm always just mindful of smaller pieces like that as I work. So once these were all weeded, as I mentioned here, I'm trying to think about how I want to make sure that it's going to be centered. So I am going to trim this down. I do want to leave a little bit of an edge because again, this is going to be used as a stencil, and I want to make sure that I'm not going to be ending up going off the edge of the stencil and making a mess on my piece. So I'm trimming this one down as well. It's not going to make a whole heck of a lot of difference for this last word. You'll see what I mean in just a few moments, but I've got it all ready to go. And now I am going to cut down my wood piece. I'm going to be using the same measurements as before, 6, 8, and 10, which actually totals to 24 inches, which is exactly the length of this piece of wood. So I'll just be using the entire piece, just cut into 3 sections of varying lengths, using my little miter box for that. Sanding off the rough edges just to make sure everything is good to go. And I'm going to paint each of them with my chalk paint. This is Ocean. This time I'm not using the Adirondack white. This is called Plaster, so it's an off-white. And then my crimson. And then I'm ready, once this was dry, I was ready to go ahead and apply my stencil. So I'm using my transfer tape to get the stencil, I'm going to call it stencil, the vinyl, onto the project. Flipping that over, I'm going to get it lined up and centered as best as I can, trying to make sure that I'm keeping the word straight as well. And then I will peel away the transfer tape after I burnish it, and it'll be good to go for stenciling. I'm going to do that with each of these pieces, getting everything prepped. When you're applying something like this, you just want to make sure you work slowly, and you can see I'm kind of wiggling the transfer tape back and forth, just taking my time. This is sped up 2.5 times. So just to keep that in mind, I am taking my time. This is where I'm like, it's not going to make much difference. I totally realized that I was thinking this was going to be 12 inches and it's 10. And so I had to do it again. And I couldn't figure out at the time how to get that same font. I think I actually did figure it out, but then it didn't occur to me to put it back to the original font. I ended up using a different font for the America to make sure that it could fit. But I'm not super disappointed that it's a different font. I think it's kind of cool, actually, that it's a separate font from the God Bless. Goodness. Only me. But now I'm going to go over these stencils with the same shade as the background shade first. And the reason I'm doing that is to lock in the stencil so that I don't get bleeding. Some people use Mod Podge to do this. I usually only use Mod Podge if I'm working with a natural wood surface. If I'm using paint, I will use the same color paint. I just find that it camouflages better. If you get leaks with the Mod Podge and you're not using Mod Podge over the entire surface of a project, it can create like a little bit of a sheen here and there, and it doesn't necessarily hide the mistakes quite as well. Not mistakes, but the bleeding, if you know what I mean. So I'm just gradually going over it. Once the paint color was dry, I went over it with my makeup sponge with my Adirondack white this time. And that was why I had done the second block in the plaster. And I'm wishing that I'd gone with an even creamier color. I wanted it to still be white, but I wanted the white on white to stand out. I'm not sure that it stands out quite enough to my liking, but I had seen something like this online somewhere, and I thought, oh, that's kind of neat that you could do a white on white, and so I tried it. In hindsight, I probably should have used a different color, but for the lettering, but it still looks nice, I think. So peeling away this last bit for America. And it did pull away some of my paint here and there, so I did just come in with a tiny little brush and do some touch-ups where needed. All right, once everything was dry, I'm ready to put it together. So I'm just using my hot glue again, running a bead between the boards, making sure that it's not extending beyond the smaller of the two each time. So just making sure I've got everything lined up and evenly spaced, that is centered, and just making sure that it is on there solid. And again, this one is done. I'm going to flip it down here for you to see, and let me know what you think of this one. Now it's time for a shout out timeout. Nice, Valerie. These are fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. I would love to give you a shout out as well. If you have interest, just send me an email at craftedbycorie@gmail.com. DIY number 3. All right. These are actually 4 little candlestick holders that I had glued together. These have been in my stash for years. I mean, before I started my YouTube channel, I had started creating decor for my wedding, and then COVID happened, and yeah. So anyway, I didn't end up using them. So I've been using them for crafting. I started to go to paint this with my chalk paint and realized I really wanted to have something on top of it to support my candles. So I went back to my stash, grabbed these little ceramic plates, also from the Dollar Tree, and I got them cleaned up and ready to apply to the top of those. So I'm going to be using my E6000, which is also what I had used to secure these glass candlestick holders together originally. And that bond is solid, you guys. It's really, really strong. So I'm applying a little bit of the E6000 to every other corner of this base, and then I'm going to, in the opposite corners, apply some hot glue so that I get that immediate bond and then the long-term hold. So once I have this set down on here, and the reason I put it on the corners is because that's what's touching that lip on the plate. It's not setting down inside on the flat surface, right? So that was what I needed to do to get this to work. So I did go back and fill in with some additional hot glue around the edges and just trying to smooth that out a little bit. The glue has been cooling very quickly. First of all, it's on glass, which it tends to cool more quickly. And then I'm also in my basement, so it's cooler down there. But went ahead and did the same exact thing with the other. And then I was ready to give everything a couple of good coats of chalk paint. This is my Adirondack white. I painted the entire surface twice, top to bottom. And then I was ready to just set them aside to dry completely. All right, so while those are drying the rest of the way, I am going to grab out this napkin. Here is my napkin hack. I did this with another set of candles a few months ago when I was starting on spring projects, and I loved how the candles turned out. So I thought it would be really fun to do it again with this flag napkin. I am going to peel it apart so that it's just a single ply. This happens to be a 2-ply napkin as opposed to 3-ply. So just be aware, a lot of napkins, especially the fancy hand towel ones, they tend to be 3-ply. So just make sure you get a single ply the way that you would if you are going to be decoupaging. And actually with this particular project, because the wax melts through it, it might not be such a big deal, but I don't know, better safe than sorry. So I'm just measuring my little candle here. I'll get them unraveled. But essentially, I'm going to be looking for grabbing just the stripes for the one candle, and then I'm going to grab the stars for the other candle. So I'll be cutting down strips of the napkin in just a moment. So, oh, and I guess before I did that, I wanted to make sure that my little iron was going to be ready. So that's my little mini easy press. You can use a regular iron with this. I just happen to have my easy press in my craft, room, and it's easy to manipulate. But now that I have my little strips cut out, I'm going to line this up to the best of my ability. I was trying really hard to make sure that the stripes were lining up with each other. So if you're, particular like I am, that's something you'll want to just try and keep in mind. So once I measured it around, I went ahead and trimmed it off. Now, the first time that I did this type of thing with the candles a few months ago, I had trimmed it to try to make it butt up with itself so that it wouldn't overlap. And I ended up with a little bit of a gap. So this time I decided I was going to let it overlap by about 1/4 inch, and I think it worked out just fine. Also, I was struggling to try and get it super tight around the candle, and you want to make sure it's as tight as possible so that you don't end up having like creases in your napkin and your candle. But I found that once I used the parchment paper, that's what I have wrapped around this. You don't want to go at this just right on top of the candle or on top of the napkin, or you're going to end up with wax all over your iron. Make sure you wrap it in butcher paper or parchment paper. I'm using parchment paper. But I found when I started wrapping it with the parchment, that helped me get a tighter wrap with the napkin. So keep that in mind. It might save you a few minutes in trying to get that done. So you can see I'm wrapping it around the top and bottoms of the candle as well. And with this particular one, it's, perfectly fine. And the bottom, I would say, is great to wrap all the time. The top here, because it's a white candle and it's a white stripe, it blended perfectly and you don't even notice that it's wrapped around the top of it. With the blue here, I'm going to end up doing the same thing. Now, I did not do that the first time I tried this project with the napkins on the candles. I had cut it so that it would be just a straight edge butting up against the top edge of the candle. And it was fine, but I at the time thought, oh, maybe it would have been nice to wrap it around the top of the candle. So I tried it with this one, and I don't know that I'm such a fan of what I did. So you'll have to take a look at it when I get it done here and let me know your thoughts. If I had to do it again, again with the red and white stripes, because the white stripe was wrapped around, it's completely camouflaged, you don't see it. With the blue, you're gonna see it, and I don't think I'm a fan of it. To do it, if I had to do it again, I probably for the blue one would not wrap it. I would make sure that I'm lining up my cut edge with the top of the candle so that it just ends with the candle edge. But I would have done the same wrapping with the other one, if that's making sense, because where it's going to blend in and be camouflaged, I think that that's probably the best way to do it. But where it is going to be obvious, I don't know. I mean, I don't hate it, but I'm not so sure that I love it either. So anyway, you take a look at this and tell me which you think. So I've got that all wrapped. I'm gonna just iron at the top of it again to get that sealed. So now you can see how both of those look. So you can see on the red and white one, you can't tell. Okay, now I'm coming in with my ribbon. We're back with the candlestick holders. They are all dry now. And I'm going to add some bows to the front. So I have my scissors. I'm just making little loop bows, and I don't know if that's the correct term for them, but the lengths of ribbon, if I had to guess, it's probably about 14 to 15 inch lengths of ribbon, and I'm kind of making a circle, pinching it in the middle, and then I'm going to take another piece of ribbon and tie a knot around the middle to secure it. The additional length of ribbon, I'm guessing, was probably about 10 inches. Wrapping that around and tying that off, and I'm going to use that for the tails. So gonna just make sure it's nice and secure. Get my bows all fluffed up the way that I want them, and then I'm going to be dovetailing my ends. If you're not sure, if you're not familiar with dovetailing, it's basically just a fancy way of saying I'm going to fold the ribbon in half and cut it at an angle so that it looks like a little dove's tail, for lack of a better term. So it kind of cuts a triangle out of the ribbon and makes the edges pretty so they won't fray. Okay, so that one is done. I'm going to do the exact same thing again with the other piece of ribbon. And you'll be able to see it a little bit better this time because I'll be a little bit more on camera, but I'm wrapping it around in a loop, pinching the center there. I'll grab another piece of ribbon that I'll use to tie off in the center. Again, it's probably about 10 inches long, maybe 8, but I think closer to 10. I'm going to tie that off, get it nice and secure and tight. I'll dovetail my ends, and then I'll be ready to get them set for the candlestick holders. There's the dovetailing. And then I'm going to be grabbing some shorter pieces of ribbon now. So I get all those little scraps out of the way. I'm going to grab some shorter pieces of ribbon now, and I'm going to lay the candlestick holders down in just a second so you can see what I'm doing. But essentially, I am looking to wrap this around so that it's going to look like the bow was tied directly around the candlestick, but we faked it because the bows will turn out much nicer doing it the way that I've done it versus actually trying to tie them around the candlestick holder. So I trimmed that down and then cut off a second. Actually, did I cut off a second length? I'm going to measure and cut off a second length here in a second if I didn't already. But yeah, I did, so that I knew that I had two of the same. So just a little bit of hot glue on there, tucking that into the hot glue, making sure that it's nice and secure, and that'll allow me to wrap this around nice and tightly. I'm just making sure that the silver edge is visible on top and bottom here so that it keeps the integrity of the ribbon is the wrong way of saying it, but I think you know the design, so it keeps the design intact, the ribbon design. Got that secured down, and I'll trim off that little bit that is sticking out. And once I have that nice and trimmed up, I'll be ready to put my bow right on top of there. So now it's going to look like it was nicely tied around the candle holder. I'm just going to hold that in place until I am confident that it is nice and cool and secure. And then I'll be doing the same exact thing with the other candlestick holder. But I think these turned out super cute. I hope that you like them as much as I do. I hope that this little napkin hack has been helpful. I want to do this with all my candles now. I want to find pretty napkins and blank candles and just fancy them all up and put them around my house. I just think it's so much fun. It's such an easy project, and I think it's impactful. I just have to find some larger plain white pillar candles that don't cost a fortune. So securing that other ribbon, gonna get that trimmed down, apply my bow, and there we go. And these will actually hold larger candles clearly. These little baby pillars that I got from the Dollar Tree fit on here nicely, but these candlestick holders will support a much larger and wider, so taller and wider pillar. But there we have it. Let me know what you think here.
Okay, everybody, that's it for today. If you enjoyed the project, please remember to give me a big thumbs up, leave me a comment, let me know which one was your favorite, and until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thank you so much for watching. Take good care. Bye.